very great pleasure to welcome you all to the second in the ongoing series of lectures, the Manhattan Forum, under the sponsorship of the St. Anthony of Padua Institute. For those who don't know, I'll say something very brief about the series and then introduce this afternoon's speaker. How many of you have read the Manhattan Declaration? Ah, good. I have an easy job, and I will be brief. This lecture series is intended to answer the call of the Manhattan Declaration to begin to raise consciousness and consciences in local areas concerning the three great threats, I think is the right word, facing the idea of a civilization of love, or the possibility of a civilization of love, or if you like, the possibility of the regime friendly to life, friendly to the worship and following of the commandments of God in our political regime, present regime. Christians are being driven out of the public square. Life and the sacredness of life from conception to natural death is under threat, and has been under threat for decades in our country. And marriage, which the Church persists in calling the natural cell of all human institutions, the natural cell of human society, is under assault. The Manhattan Declaration, a call to conscience, asks us to reflect on these difficulties, to maintain our position in the public square, defending truth as we know it. And this lecture series is intended to help equip you for that kind of work every day in your life. The series is intended, will be monthly, that is, we'll have a lecture every month from now through September, when, with the cooperation of the Diocese of Oakland, the Institute will author a regional conference, including one or two authors of the Declaration, we hope. Invitations have gone out. But I can tell you that a keynote speaker at that event will be our late ordinary Alan Vigneron, now Archbishop of Detroit, who will come to speak to us concerning the duty of Catholics to take up a counter-cultural stand in today's world. So look, keep your eye out for that. We'll be making a great deal of noise about it, as you might expect, in the coming weeks. We're very, very glad to be able to present this afternoon Father Michael Sweeney of the Order of Preachers. I've known him for a long time. We're both preachers of the Pleistocene age. And I have a long history of admiring his thought and his preaching. He joined the Order of Preachers in 1973. He's been a member of the province here, the Province of the Holy Name. He's been a campus minister, a pastor, and, oddly enough, for a member of the Order of Preachers, an itinerant preacher in the Midwest, the Northwest. He is presently president of the Dominican School of Philosophy and Theology of the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley. I would strongly suggest that you visit the Dominican School website. It's just www.dspt.edu, where you will see that admirable things are happening. So I ask you to warmly welcome and to listen carefully, it will be repaid, to Father Michael Sweeney.
Thank you very much. In his philosophical work, The Acting Person, then Cardinal Karol Wojtyła, of course John Paul II, suggested that the last 500 years of philosophical inquiry could be subtitled, Whatever Happened to the Good? Now, whatever we mean by good, I think, has largely been lost from view. And so if we are to speak of the laity and the common good, my topic, we are therefore confronted immediately with three challenges, I think. So, what do we mean by good? Then in this age of radical individualism, what do we mean by common? And for that matter, who are the laity? So I propose to assert that there is a good for the human person that is truly common, and that it defines the office of the layperson in the Church. The precise task that the Church entrusts to the laity is to discern and advance the common good. Now, our first two questions, what is common and what is good, are very much interrelated. When Aristotle speaks of the good, he designates rather than defines. I don't think the good can be defined. I don't think Aristotle's attempt really is a definition, it's a designation. It's pointing to something. He says, the good is that which all men desire, all men seek. Now notice that the idea of something common is given in the very notion of the good. The good designates something that is first true of all. All people seek the good. It's first all, and because it pertains to all, necessarily it pertains to each. And so when we say common, we really mean common. Something that pertains to all first, and therefore necessarily to each. Breathing, for example, is truly common. It pertains to all people, and because we are people, that is, because our animal nature is part of our very definition as persons, human persons, to breathe necessarily applies to each of us. Had I never drawn breath, I would never have been a human person, and therefore necessarily I could have never been the individual whose name is Michael. Now when it comes to breathing, or to anything that is properly common, individualism clearly discovers its horizon. I think that's the first thing I want us to notice. Individualism can pertain exactly to the degree that what is common is first satisfied. So, that is because the good that breathing secures, human life, is absolutely a foundation and a condition for the myriad of consequent expressions that human life can afford. Now, that breathing is common, I think, is fairly obvious. No one in his five or her five senses would deny it. But, apart from breathing, what are these common things? That there are common physical necessities of life is apparent to everybody. The human person needs food, shelter, clothing against the cold, sleep. The human who is not fed, sheltered, clothed, or is inadequately rested will perish. No one is exempt from requiring these goods. Again, they are goods that apply to all of us, and therefore necessarily to each of us. There are also, however, necessities which are less immediately apparent, but common nonetheless. For example, the need for encouragement, for education, for companionship, as John Paul II insisted, for love. Again, no one is exempt from seeking these goods. The human person who is not encouraged, taught, accompanied, loved, will never know happiness. Nor, moreover, will he or she have a very firm idea about themselves, who they are. Now, because it is the common things that are foundational, even to the very possibility of our being individuals. Again, if we lack the common things, we will perish. We will perish physically, or we will perish spiritually. But it is because of these things we must begin all thinking about our life as a life with others. This, of course, is how we actually do begin life and how we first developed. Each of us is born into a whole constellation of relationships, and I come to discover my own identity. I can learn what it is to be a subject, a self, an I, really only in the presence of others, and because I first belong to a we. This is true in the order of nature, and it's also true in the order of grace.